The boy clutched his lifeless dog against his chest, sitting in the stench of burnt metal and rotting dreams. Blood soaked through his shirt, but his eyes locked onto the stolen laptop, the only thing he believed could lead him out. In the chaos of screams, fire, and vanishing shadows, one question ripped from his cracked throat: why me? This wasn't a place for hope. But right there in the ashes and the ruin, light began to grow. Subscribe now to follow more powerful real-life stories that will shake your soul and ignite your hope. There was a sound the dump made. It wasn't quite human, not quite mechanical either. It was somewhere in between a low moan, a creaking chorus of forgotten machines and broken lives carried on the breath of hot wind. In Accra's massive landfill, that sound never stopped. It pulsed like a heartbeat beneath the screeches of vultures, under the distant rumble of trucks, through the muffled cries of children buried in the smoke. The camera glided low, slow. Heat shimmered above crumpled soda cans, cracked television sets, and the remains of a crushed wheelchair. Plastic bags fluttered like lost souls caught in barbed wire. A haze of smoke curled upward from spontaneous fires where chemicals and sunlight conspired to consume the very bones of the earth. In the middle of it all, among the burnt mattresses and collapsed microwaves, a boy moved. 13. No shoes. Dark skin turned ashen from soot. Shirt frayed at the sleeves, one side hanging lower than the other. His arms, though thin, worked with fierce intention. He had the kind of focus grown men long for. His name was Kojo. He crouched beside what used to be a blender, the blade rusted, the motor half melted. In his hand was a bent screwdriver he'd sharpened on a concrete slab. Every motion he made was purposeful. Strip, yank, twist. He was hunting copper, the veins of dead appliances, the currency of the forgotten. The sun bore down like punishment. Kojo's forehead glistened. A cut above his eyebrow reopened from wiping away sweat with the back of his wrist. He didn't flinch. Cuts healed. Hunger didn't. A vulture landed nearby, heavy, silent, watching. Kojo didn't look up. "You're late today," he muttered. Not knowing why he spoke to the bird, only that it had become part of the place just like him. The bird tilted its head. Kojo grinned. There's nothing left over here anyway. The big boys got to it first. His grin vanished as quickly as it came. He pried loose a length of wire and shoved it into his sack, almost full. Not enough. He moved again deeper into the mound of waste. To most it was chaos, an endless sprawl of ruin. But Kojo saw patterns, knew where the richer piles were. The electronics weren't dumped randomly. They followed rhythm timing the moods of the city's trash cycle. He crawled across a ridge of old printers and speakers, ignoring the sharp edge that scraped his knee. Below, between two broken suitcases, something glinted. He paused. Then he saw it. Not a phone, not a tablet, bigger, flat. A laptop. He didn't breathe for a moment. He slid down, knees hitting the gravel with a crunch. Carefully, he pulled the object free. It was caked in grime, the corner cracked. He tried to open it. The hinges groaned, but the lid lifted. Black screen. He pressed the power button. Nothing. His chest sank. But something told him, don't give up. He squinted at the side panel. No battery, but the port looked intact. If there was even a spark of life left inside it. He wiped the screen with his shirt, smearing the dust into streaks. Then he sat down cross-legged and stared at the device as if it might speak. Behind him, smoke curled into the air. The wind shifted. Somewhere in the distance, a baby cried. A horn blared. But for Kojo, it all faded. This wasn't just plastic and wires. This was a door. Maybe to a world he'd never touched. Voiceover. Kojo's inner monologue. They say the dump is where things go to die. But they don't know. They don't hear it. This place talks. Whispers. It tells you where to look, what to take, when to run. The dump has a soul. Ugly, twisted, tired. But still, a soul. Sometimes it gives back, just a little. Just enough to keep you coming back. just enough to make you think maybe something here still lives. Kojo sat with the laptop on his lap, his thumb resting over the faded trackpad. He didn't know what he was waiting for. Maybe for it to turn on, maybe for it to move. But mostly, he waited for the idea that had just sprouted in his chest to grow into something he could name. Behind him, the vulture let out a long, guttural cry. Kojo glanced back. Yeah, I'm still here. Then slowly he stood. He cradled the laptop like it was something fragile. Not trash, not salvage. A secret. He tucked it under his arm and turned toward the east ridge, where the sun hit the metal roofs in long lines of light. He would find a way to make it work. Someone had power, someone had wires. There had to be a spark left somewhere. He looked up just for a second. A single kite flew overhead, cobbled from string and plastic scraps. It dipped, caught the wind, rose again. He smiled. And then, as if summoned by his silent prayer, a low hum filled the air. The screen flickered, faint but unmistakable. Blue light. Kojo froze. He tilted the laptop. The battery bar blinked red. Dying, but alive. His eyes widened. In their reflection, the glow of a world he had never known. He sank back down cross-legged, breathing shallow. On the screen, a logo spun slowly, then faded. Then came the desktop, blurry old, but real. There were folders, files, names he couldn't read. He moved the trackpad. The cursor twitched. He laughed. Quietly, like he didn't want the dump to hear. He clicked one of the folders. A video loaded. Music poured from the speakers, warped digital, but music nonetheless. On-screen colors danced. Shapes morphed. A rocket launched. Kojo stared. He had never seen a rocket. He had never heard music like that. His lips parted. He clicked again. Another video. A voice speaking English, clear, instructive. Words he didn't know, but tone he understood. Calm. Purposeful. He leaned in, as if the screen was a doorway he could crawl into. The laptop beeped, battery low. He didn't care. In that moment, Kojo forgot he was in a dump. He forgot his ribs showed that his feet bled, that his last meal was yesterday morning. In that moment, he wasn't a scavenger. He was a witness to something big, to something beautiful. The wind shifted again, carrying the smell of burning plastic past his nose. But he didn't flinch. He barely noticed. His hand trembled as he reached to click again. Another video. This one, robots, machines moving on their own, lines of code flashing. Kojo didn't know what they meant, but he wanted to, desperately. He stared at the code like it was scripture, and deep inside his chest, where hunger used to sit, something new stirred. Not quite understanding, not yet hope, but almost. He looked around as if to make sure no one else saw. Then he smiled, soft, quiet, like the very first spark of light. The light from the laptop faded slowly that night, flickering out like a firefly that had outlived its glow. Kojo sat there, long after the screen went dark. His knees pulled up to his chest, arms wrapped around them. He could still hear it, the sound of the video that had just played. Not the words. Those escaped him. But the rhythm, the music, the rising and falling hum of the voice that narrated something about machines. It had a cadence that lingered, like rain on zinc, like the voice of someone you didn't know but wanted to trust. He closed the lid gently, almost reverently. Then he pulled the laptop close and stood heading toward the shelter he called home, an overturned refrigerator wedged against a rusted-out minivan door, patched with plastic, and a torn billboard tarp that once advertised powdered milk. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of rubber and metal. Kojo placed the laptop on a crate and curled up beside it, fingers still trembling slightly, not from cold, but from something else. He didn't have a name for it, yet. The next morning came with a scream, a rooster somewhere far off, defiant against the blaring horns from the city that didn't see this place. Kojo woke with the sun and a belly that folded in on itself. He took his sack of wires and walked barefoot down the narrow path, past mountains of plastic and shattered glass, to where the collector man came on Fridays. 20 pesewas, he didn't argue. The coins clinked into his hand, warm from the buyer's palm. At a roadside stall, he bought leftover rice wrapped in newspaper. Half of it was hard stuck together, but he didn't complain. Hunger didn't allow pride. He sat under the husk of a satellite dish and ate in silence. That's when the dog appeared, thin trembling patches of fur missing. Its ribs looked sharp enough to cut wind. One ear folded the other upright like a broken antenna trying to catch a frequency long gone. The dog didn't bark. It just watched. Kojo tore a piece of fried fish bone from the rice and held it out. "Here," he said softly. "I'm not greedy." The dog didn't move at first. Then, slow, cautious, it approached. Took the bone, retreated. Kojo smiled. "You look like you got questions," he said. "Like you want to ask why this place stinks so bad. Why the sky never rains when you need it." The dog tilted its head. Kojo wiped his hand on his shorts. "I'll call you Bisa. That means the one who asks. You cool with that?" Bisa gave a low, almost inaudible sound. Not quite a bark, more like agreement. They stayed like that for a while. Boy and dog sitting amid mountains of wreckage, sharing silence as if it were food. That night, Kojo rigged a crude shelter using bits of tarp and a broomstick so he and Bisa could lie together without getting soaked by the occasional drizzle. The laptop was perched on an overturned water bucket. He'd managed to charge it again temporarily by bartering a length of copper wire for 5 minutes on a mechanic's car battery. It wasn't enough, but it was something. The screen came alive once more, that weak blue glow flickering across the faces of both boy and dog. Kojo navigated by instinct, not literacy. Icons were pictures, videos were doors. He clicked one. The screen burst into life. Animated gears turning lines of code, scrolling robotic arms, assembling a small machine. The voiceover returned soothing, steady, wrapped in a melody of explanation and wonder. Kojo didn't understand the words, but the images, they were everything. He leaned in, eyes wide, breath shallow. Bisa sat beside him, ears twitching at the electronic whirs and clicks from the tiny speaker. Then something appeared on screen, a simple drawing. A blueprint almost. A sketch of a claw reaching out from a box holding a ball. Kojo stared. When the video ended, he sat frozen. Then he stood, carefully, took the stick he used to prop up the tarp, and stepped out into the dirt. He bent down and started drawing in the dust. Lines, circles, a box, a stick arm, a claw. It wasn't perfect, but it looked close. Bisa watched, head tilted. Kojo stood back and looked at his work. His hand trembled slightly as he whispered, like the one in the video. His voice cracked not from emotion, but from the realization of what he had just done. He had remembered, not just remembered, recreated. He didn't know how to spell his own name, but he could draw a mechanical claw from memory. Bisa let out a soft chuff. Kojo smiled. "I think you're smarter than me," he said. "But don't worry, I'm catching up." Over the next days, Kojo fed every spare coin he had into minutes of borrowed electricity. The mechanic, the fruit seller, even a taxi driver who let him plug in for a minute while waiting for a customer. Each became a power source in his growing map of hope. Each charge gave him a few more windows into that strange, beautiful world. Cartoons about flying cities. Videos of kids building toys with wires and plastic. Footage of drones delivering medicine. And then the video he watched again and again, the one with the robot that could sort balls by color. It was simple, basic. But to Kojo, it was magic. He tried drawing it again, more precise this time. He even used bits of broken chalk he found to color in parts red, for the ball blue, for the wires, yellow for the gears. Bisa lay beside him, resting her head on his thigh. He spoke as he drew, not to the dog, not even to himself, but to something bigger. "Maybe if I can figure this out," he said softly, "I can build something too. Like them. Maybe not now, but someday." He traced the outline again, over and over. The repetition wasn't boredom. It was a promise. One night a storm rolled in fast. Thunder cracked like the earth itself had snapped. Kojo scrambled to cover the laptop, wrapping it in layers of plastic before crawling under the fridge shelter. Bisa whined and pressed close to him, shaking. Rain pounded the ground. Water leaked through the tarp. Kojo held the laptop to his chest like a mother would hold a child. And then, as the storm raged, he began whispering stories to Bisa about robots that cleaned cities, about machines that made food, about a boy named Kojo who built a device that could find lost children by the sound of their voice. He didn't know where these ideas came from. Maybe the laptop, maybe the dump, maybe they'd always been inside him, waiting for a shape to form. When the storm ended, the dump smelled new, briefly, like wet fire and iron and possibility. Kojo stepped out, shoe-soaked pants clinging to his legs. He wiped off the laptop, heart racing. It still worked. He clicked. The familiar video loaded. He smiled. Then he looked down at his newest drawing, muddy now, the lines blurred, but still there, still visible. Bisa came and stood beside him, tail wagging faintly. Kojo nodded. We keep going. The dump, for all its death and decay, had given him one impossible thing. A glimpse of another world, one filled with sounds he didn't understand, pictures that moved like dreams, voices that told stories he couldn't yet read, but longed to. And somehow that longing became something more, not just curiosity, but hunger. And this time it wasn't for food. It was a Tuesday. One of those Ghanaian afternoons, where the heat doesn't just press down on you, it wraps around your ribs and tries to squeeze you out of your own skin. Yaw's boots sank half an inch into a mix of mud and plastic shards with every step. The scent hit him first, smoldering polyethylene dead batteries and something rotting that he didn't care to identify. He pulled the collar of his shirt higher over his nose, though it made little difference. He adjusted the strap of his field bag and kept moving. Yaw was a systems engineer working with a waste-to-energy research group out of the University of Ghana. Every month he volunteered to survey new sections of the Accra dump, checking for any pockets of salvageable tech or usable compounds. Most of his peers hated the assignment. But Yaw, he kept volunteering. There was something honest about trash. Trash didn't lie. Trash didn't dress itself up to be anything else. And sometimes Yaw thought trash kept secrets. That's when he saw the boy. About 20 meters ahead, between two collapsed CRT televisions and a sun-bleached teddy bear missing its face, a kid sat with his back to the world. At first, Yaw thought he was asleep. But then, he noticed the boy's hands twitching, moving alive. Yaw slowed his pace. The boy wasn't just sitting, he was focused, locked in, crouched over something glowing faintly in his lap. A laptop, not just any laptop. An old Dell Latitude busted hinge screen flickering like a dying candle. But it was on. Yaw froze. The laptop was on. The dump was known for things long dead. Power was a myth here. And yet this boy had found light in the middle of waste. The child's face was taut with concentration. Lips, slightly parted brows, drawn in. His eyes tracked the screen like they were following a shooting star. He didn't notice Yaw approaching, didn't even notice the shadow stretching across his feet. Then the screen blinked. The boy's hands darted. He slammed the lid shut and twisted around, eyes wide. Their gazes locked. Yaw blinked. The boy didn't. For a long moment, neither spoke. Kojo, though. Yaw didn't know his name yet, clutched the laptop tight against his chest muscles, rigid. His eyes darted toward the exit path, the shortest route to escape. But Yaw didn't move, didn't raise a hand, didn't speak, just stood there, watching. And something in the stillness, the quiet, the unexpected gentleness in Yaw's stance made Kojo pause. A beat. Two. Kojo stepped back slowly, never breaking eye contact. Then he turned and ran. He was gone before Yaw could say a word. That night, Yaw couldn't sleep. He lay in his modest apartment ceiling fan, creaking overhead mosquitoes whining around his ankles. He kept seeing that boy's face, that look. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was ownership, defiance, the kind you only earn when the world's already tried to take everything from you and failed. Yaw sat up, turned on the lamp, and made a note in his journal. Accra dump. Boy with laptop. Not accidental. Returned. 3 days passed. Yaw went back, not officially. He told his supervisor he was conducting a materials density survey. It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. He searched the same area, old TV Hill, the burned teddy bear, a busted refrigerator with hope spray-painted across its door. No sign of the boy. He almost gave up. Then he saw it half hidden under a cracked satellite dish, a small tin box, empty inside. Except for one thing, a drawing, faint, scratched on paper that had been damp and dried too many times. It showed a robotic arm holding a ball. Sloppy lines, but unmistakable intent. Yaw felt his chest tighten. Someone had tried to remember something. Someone had tried to preserve something. He placed a fresh AA battery inside the box, closed the lid, and walked away. A week later, he came back. The tin box was gone. In its place, another drawing. And this time next to it, a cracked USB cable still usable. Yaw smiled. That's how the dialogue began. No words, just an exchange of artifacts. Batteries. Wires. A penlight. A printed image of a robotic arm with annotated parts in both English and Twi. Each time, Yaw left something behind. Something else appeared in return, a scrap of drawing, a worn circuit diagram. A sliver of code, handwritten by someone who couldn't read, but could remember shapes. Then one day the boy was there, waiting, perched on a plastic crate like it was a throne, arms folded, the laptop at his side. He didn't flinch when Yaw approached this time. Didn't smile. Didn't run. Just watched. Yaw stopped 5 feet away. "Can I sit?" The boy blinked once, then nodded. They sat in silence. Kojo stared at it, then at Yaw, then back at the food.